I'm a big admirer of Lee Marvin. I think most people are. He's a most talented actor. He's currently starring along with Oliver Reed in Great Scout and Cathouse Thursday. That's the name of the picture, folks. Would you welcome Lee Marvin?
In 1966, Lee Marvin showed up drunk on a movie set and destroyed a prop gun. What happened next would end up costing the studio millions, permanently ending a Hollywood friendship, and making his co-star swear he'd rather wrestle a grizzly bear than ever work with Marvin again. From drunken delays to revenge punches, this is the untold story of why Lee Marvin's co-star refused to work with him ever again. Lee Marvin was born on February 19, 1924, in New York City. His full name was Lamont Waltman Marvin Jr., and his childhood was anything but easy. He struggled in school due to undiagnosed ADHD and dyslexia, which often landed him in trouble. Once, he was even expelled for throwing a classmate off a second-story balcony. He cycled through various schools, including a military academy, but none seemed to fit. Though academics weren't his strength, Marvin found solace in the outdoors. As a teenager, he spent weekends hunting in the Everglades, going after deer, pumas, and wild turkeys. These rugged experiences built his survival skills and adventurous spirit, which would later define his Hollywood persona. Strangely enough, he also learned to play the violin as a boy, an unexpected talent for someone who would become famous for playing hard-edged characters. In 1942, at just 18, Marvin joined the U.S. Marine Corps, against his father's wishes. After fast-tracking through school to qualify, he signed up and initially worked as a quartermaster before becoming a scout sniper in the 4th Marine Division. He fought in 21 brutal battles across the Pacific, including Kwajalein, Eniwetok, and Saipan. During the Battle of Saipan in 1944, Marvin was gravely injured while scaling a mountain under fire. He was shot multiple times, one wound severing a nerve in his back. Most of his unit was killed, but Marvin survived and spent over a year in recovery. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Combat Action Ribbon, and the Presidential Unit Citation. Though he had been promoted to corporal, his rebellious nature had seen him demoted back to private first class before his discharge. After leaving the Marines, Marvin, now 22 and directionless, took a job as a plumber's assistant for $27 a week. Everything changed in July when he was fixing a toilet at the Maverick Theater. The director, Robert Elwyn, was in a bind. An actor had fallen ill hours before a performance. Seeing Marvin, tall and striking, he asked if he had ever acted. Marvin replied, "No, but I've lied all my life." That line was enough. He was cast on the spot in the role of a loud Texan named Buzzy and given just 3 hours to prepare. With no knowledge of stage directions, Marvin simply knew how to be loud, and it worked. His debut was a hit. The audience loved him, and a local paper called him a natural. The next day, he quit his plumbing job and dedicated himself to acting. By early 1947, Marvin had moved to New York City and enrolled in the American Theater Wing using the GI Bill. The school was known for producing stars like Gregory Peck. Marvin trained intensely, 6 days a week, struggling with classical material like Shakespeare, but excelling in raw, emotional performance. His unique look and natural presence stood out. Teachers noted how his face could tell a story without words. He also formed friendships with classmates like Jack Warden and Rod Steiger, future allies in his rising career. After 18 months of training, Marvin started hunting for work. His first film appearance was uncredited in Leather Gloves, 1948, playing a silent boxing spectator. Over the next few years, he racked up minor roles in films like 12 O'Clock High and began appearing on television, slowly building his resume and confidence. In 1951, Marvin finally got a credited role in You're in the Navy Now, playing Quartermaster Krause. He had a few lines alongside Gary Cooper, and critics praised his performance as natural and believable. That film also marked the debuts of Charles Bronson and Jack Warden, co-stars he'd work with again. Marvin later joked that the film should have been called You're in the Movies Now. At 29, Marvin's breakthrough came with the 1953 crime classic The Big Heat, where he played Vince Stone, a sadistic gangster. To prepare, Marvin studied real-life mobsters in Chicago, mimicking their movements and mannerisms. The result was electric. His performance was terrifying and convincing, earning him 17 new offers to play villains. His pay jumped from $5,000 to $20,000. That same year, he starred in The Wild One opposite Marlon Brando, playing Chino, the rival gang leader. In one famous unscripted moment, he smashed a beer bottle on his own head, shocking the crew but creating an iconic scene. The film was banned in the UK until 1967 due to its controversial portrayal of biker culture, but made $4.5 million in the US, with Marvin standing out even next to Brando. From 1954 to 1956, Marvin's career skyrocketed. He appeared in 12 films, including Bad Day at Black Rock and 7 Men from Now, becoming Hollywood's go-to tough guy. These roles weren't one-dimensional villains. They were intense, layered, and deeply human. By 1956, Marvin was commanding $50,000 per film, and his reputation as a formidable, complex actor continued to grow. But with that fame came a darker side, one that would eventually explode on set in ways that changed careers and lives forever. By 1957, Lee Marvin was no longer just a tough guy. He was becoming a true Hollywood star. That year, he made a bold transition to television, starring in M Squad, a groundbreaking crime drama centered on Chicago detective Frank Ballinger. Filmed on real locations in Chicago, the show stood out for its gritty realism and willingness to tackle controversial topics like police corruption, subjects other shows avoided. M Squad was a hit, running for 3 seasons and drawing millions of viewers weekly. Marvin's salary started at $5,000 per episode and climbed to $7,500 by the final season. The show's theme song, composed by Count Basie, even became a charting musical success. M Squad became so influential it inspired parodies like Police Squad and the Naked Gun films. In 1965, Marvin's career reached new heights with Cat Ballou, a Western comedy in which he showcased his incredible range by playing 2 very different characters. Kid Shalene, a drunken gunslinger who transformed into a deadly sharpshooter after a few drinks, and Tim Strawn, a cold assassin with a silver nose. Marvin researched both roles meticulously, observing real drunks in bars for Shalene and channeling his military experience for the menacing Strawn. Despite the film's comedic tone, Marvin's layered performance surprised critics and audiences alike. When he won the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1966, beating legends like Richard Burton and Laurence Olivier, it shocked even him. His humorous acceptance speech, where he thanked the horse he rode in the film, made him even more beloved. Before Cat Ballou, Marvin was often typecast in supporting roles or villainous characters. The Oscar win changed everything, launching him into leading roles with million-dollar paychecks. His next big hit came with The Professionals, 1966, a western about a high-stakes mission to rescue a kidnapped woman in Mexico. Marvin played Rico Fardan, a skilled weapons expert, alongside Burt Lancaster and Claudia Cardinale. Despite grueling desert conditions, temperatures often topping 100 degrees Fahrenheit, Marvin performed some of his own stunts, including scaling a cliff. His sharp dialogue and chemistry with Lancaster helped the film become a massive box office success, earning $19.5 million and a Golden Globe nomination for Marvin. Then in 1967, he starred in The Dirty Dozen, one of the most iconic war films of the era. Marvin played Major John Reisman, a no-nonsense officer tasked with leading a group of criminals on a dangerous mission during World War II. Drawing from his real-life Marine experience, Marvin brought authenticity and gravitas to the role. Even alongside a powerhouse cast that included Charles Bronson and Donald Sutherland, Marvin stood out, performing risky stunts like jumping off a moving train. The film grossed $45 million and solidified Marvin as one of Hollywood's top-paid actors. His tough persona and memorable lines became genre-defining. That same year, Marvin surprised audiences again in Point Blank, a stylish revenge thriller where he played a betrayed man named Walker. The film broke narrative conventions with its disjointed storytelling and deeper themes of betrayal and modern society. Marvin barely spoke in the movie, yet his silent intensity dominated the screen. He insisted on doing his own stunts, and scenes were shot in gritty real-world locations, including Los Angeles and Alcatraz. Though not a commercial success at the time, Point Blank later became a cult classic and is now considered one of the most influential crime films of the 1960s. In 1969, Marvin took another unexpected turn, this time in a musical. Paint Your Wagon cast him as Ben Rumson, a grizzled prospector during the California Gold Rush. Known for his gruff voice, Marvin's singing on screen was a surprise to many, but he took the challenge seriously, working with a vocal coach. His song Wand'rin' Star topped the UK charts for 3 weeks. Although the film was costly, requiring the construction of an entire mining town, it became a box office success. Critics were divided on Marvin's vocal performance, but his willingness to break out of typecasting impressed fans and showed his range. Unfortunately, Marvin's career stumbled in the years that followed. He starred in several box office disappointments, including Monty Walsh, 1970, a western that failed to recoup its budget, and Prime Cut, 1972, a violent crime thriller that alienated audiences despite a strong cast featuring Gene Hackman. In 1973, he reunited with his Dirty Dozen director for Emperor of the North, but the film also flopped. These misfires signaled a decline in Marvin's star power. However, Marvin made a notable comeback in 1980 with The Big Red One, a World War II epic directed by Samuel Fuller and based on Fuller's personal war experiences. Marvin played a hardened sergeant, a role that fit him perfectly. At 56, he brought authenticity drawn from his own Marine background, mentoring younger actors like Mark Hamill and Robert Carradine. Critics praised his performance, calling it one of his best, and the film earned $24 million, far exceeding expectations and winning Marvin his first Golden Globe nomination in 15 years. Marvin's final film was The Delta Force, 1986, an action movie inspired by real-life events. He starred alongside Chuck Norris as a military commander. Though 62 and struggling with health issues, Marvin remained committed, performing some of his own stunts. The film did reasonably well at the box office but was panned by critics. For Marvin, it was a final tribute to the tough guy persona he had built over decades. Off-screen, Marvin's life was plagued by a long battle with alcoholism, a struggle that deeply affected his personal and professional life. His drinking was notorious, so much so that during the filming of Ship of Fools in 1965, co-star Vivien Leigh, who also battled addiction, complained about his breath during scenes. Ironically, that same year Marvin won the Oscar for Cat Ballou, reinforcing a belief on set that his drinking even enhanced his performances, an idea that only fueled his addiction further. But his alcohol use came at a cost. On the set of The Big Red One, Marvin sometimes refused to speak to his co-stars for long periods, and when he did, it was often to hurl random insults. Despite his talent and achievements, the toll of his addiction was visible behind the scenes. By 1983, while filming Gorky Park, Lee Marvin's health had deteriorated so badly that he had to be hospitalized the moment he arrived on set. Director Michael Apted had no choice but to hold rehearsals at Marvin's hospital bedside. It had become painfully clear that Marvin's drinking wasn't just damaging his reputation, it was destroying his health. Still, Marvin had a way of charming certain people. During the filming of Ship of Fools, he befriended Vivien Leigh despite his erratic behavior. In one bizarre incident, he tore up an antique deck of playing cards at her home. Instead of being upset, Leigh appeared to like him even more, showing just how complicated Marvin's relationships could be. But not everyone was so forgiving. After his hit TV series M Squad ended in 1960, Marvin didn't land any acting jobs for a full year, sending him into a spiral of depression. Much of that professional drought was due to his growing reputation as unreliable, a consequence of his increasingly uncontrollable drinking. One of the lowest points of his career came during the filming of The Professionals in 1966. That shoot marked the beginning of his infamous feud with co-star Burt Lancaster. The trouble began during a brutally hot day in the Mojave Desert, with temperatures soaring to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Marvin, a war veteran who cared deeply about historical accuracy, insisted the production use period-correct weapons. Lancaster disagreed, prioritizing aesthetics over realism. Their disagreement escalated into a shouting match, with Marvin throwing a prop gun that nearly hit someone. Lancaster, furious, confronted him, and the two men ended up in a physical shoving match that halted filming for hours and cost the studio a fortune. Director Richard Brooks attempted to mediate, but tensions only escalated. The following day, Marvin made a show of apologizing by dropping to his knees before Lancaster, only to reveal it was a joke. Lancaster didn't find it funny. Marvin would later deliberately flub his lines during scenes with Lancaster, forcing multiple retakes. Their animosity peaked during a dangerous train stunt. Though Marvin was hungover, he insisted on doing it himself, infuriating Lancaster, who believed the move was reckless. The final straw came on October 5, when Marvin showed up late to a crucial shoot, reeking of alcohol and unable to remember his lines. Lancaster, already dressed and waiting in the heat, exploded. He berated Marvin in front of the entire crew, calling him a disgrace and threatening to walk off the set. His yelling reduced a young crew member to tears. Lancaster stormed off to his trailer and refused to return for hours, throwing the entire production into chaos. The studio considered firing Marvin but ultimately decided the fallout would be even worse. Director Brooks feared the conflict might become physical, and during one scene, it did. A punch meant to be staged actually connected, leaving Marvin bruised. Lancaster claimed it was an accident, but rumors swirled that it was payback. Tensions ran so high that Brooks added extra safety measures and scheduled separate rehearsals for the climactic mountain scene just to keep the actors apart. After the film wrapped, Marvin and Lancaster never worked together again. Their feud became Hollywood legend. Years later, when asked if he'd work with Marvin again, Lancaster famously replied, "I'd rather wrestle a grizzly bear." Marvin, more diplomatic in public, privately told friends that working with Lancaster was like acting alongside a statue with a bad attitude. Their animosity not only ended their working relationship, but likely cost them future roles together. Marvin's personal life was just as turbulent. He married twice. His first marriage, to Betty Ebeling in 1951, lasted 16 years and produced 4 children: Christopher, Courtney, Cynthia, and Claudia. Betty endured a great deal: Marvin's heavy drinking, infidelity, and frequent brushes with the law. In her memoir, she recalled how Marvin would get pulled over for drunk driving but often charmed his way out by signing autographs for police officers. The marriage ended in 1967, shortly after Marvin won the Academy Award for Cat Ballou. Despite his fame and fortune, Marvin shocked many when he left only $10,000 to his children upon his death in 1987, even though he was worth millions. His second marriage, to childhood sweetheart Pamela Feely, was more peaceful. They reconnected after Marvin's explosive breakup with Michelle Triola and remained together for 17 years, until his death. But it was his relationship with Triola that became the most controversial chapter of his personal life. The two never married, but after their split, Michelle changed her last name to Marvin and filed a landmark lawsuit seeking $1.8 million. She claimed Marvin had promised to support her for life. The legal battle, Marvin versus Marvin, became a media sensation and set a precedent in cases involving cohabiting partners. The court initially awarded her $104,000, but the decision was later overturned. Despite it all, Triola claimed she never stopped loving Marvin and maintained that stance until her death in 2009. What surprised many was how progressive Marvin was for his time. In 1969, long before it was common in Hollywood, he openly supported gay rights and said he had no problem playing a gay character. He was secure in his own masculinity and didn't shy away from controversial roles or views. Politically, he identified as a Democrat and supported candidates like John F. Kennedy, Eugene McCarthy, and George McGovern, figures known for their anti-war positions. Though Marvin starred in many war films, he despised the glorification of combat, preferring gritty, realistic portrayals like Hell in the Pacific and The Big Red One. He even turned down the lead role in Patton because he didn't want to glamorize war. His outspokenness sometimes clashed with Hollywood's conservative elite, but Marvin didn't care. He always stood firm in his beliefs. Lee Marvin left a legacy that still resonates in Hollywood. He wasn't a typical actor. He brought a raw, unfiltered intensity to his roles that helped redefine the action genre. His influence can be seen in stars like Charles Bronson and Clint Eastwood. When Marvin and Bronson worked together on The Dirty Dozen in 1967, Bronson was still searching for his breakout role. Marvin, already a seasoned star, modeled a hardened yet restrained kind of toughness, something Bronson would later emulate in Death Wish. Clint Eastwood also admired Marvin, once saying that Marvin taught him how a single look could say more than a whole monologue. Eastwood carried that lesson into his own films, especially Dirty Harry, building characters whose power came from silence and presence rather than words. Even after his death in 1987, Marvin's work continued to be celebrated. In 1998, the U.S. Postal Service honored him with a commemorative stamp featuring his image from The Dirty Dozen. It was so popular that over 40 million stamps were sold in one year. In 2005, the American Film Institute named him the 14th greatest male screen legend, ranking him alongside icons like Humphrey Bogart and John Wayne. In 2012, Marvin's hometown of Woodstock, New York, honored him with a 7-foot-tall bronze statue depicting him in his Marine Corps uniform, an enduring tribute to both his military service and cinematic legacy. One of the most unusual but heartfelt tributes came from a secretive group called the Sons of Lee Marvin, founded by filmmaker Jim Jarmusch in 1986. The club only accepts members who resemble they could be Marvin's son. Notable members include musicians Tom Waits and John Lurie. They meet to watch Marvin's films and discuss his influence on cinema, a quirky but sincere homage to a man who left a larger-than-life mark on Hollywood.